YouTube, Dustin Ryder here. Welcome to my review for King-Ohger episode 18. So this was, I say this at the beginning everyone, another great episode. I do have some slight nitpicks and issues about it, and some of the story overall in regards to just some of the storylines in the last few episodes and going forward, but it was nothing that stopped this episode, self-contained, from being pretty great. I mean, we start off with Rackley's and Gira fighting yet again after he found out he was alive, and he pulls out the power-up immediately. As we recently found out, I mean, we knew about this power-up for a while, but I recently found out. I didn't know that Silver was going to get it. I remember sort of a rumor, but it just kind of came out this week for me. But they both get the power-up, or at least a version of it, like Rackley's is slightly altered, and he transforms into it first, which, honestly, I don't know if the scans had any info or any spoilers about this, but I didn't expect that. I honestly thought Rackley's was going to somehow get his hands on it later in a couple episodes, or I thought it was going to be another situation like with his powers where he had some sort of replicant. I get a feeling at some point we could very well see him create a replica version and see both power-ups go at it, but he transforms into it first, which is just kind of cool and unconventional in a way, which I think is neat. I really do like the suits for both. I think they're some of the coolest power-ups and just extend my love for the aesthetic of the series overall. I do have to say I like Rackley's a little bit more, just because of the added Silver vibes to it. It just kind of adds something special to it. Not to mention it being pretty cool. We have a Rogue Ranger getting a power-up. But he initially transforms into it and defeats Gira, but Gira gets saved by Jeremy and gets sent away. And then you do have some fallout from this. As I mentioned last week, I'm like, how does Rackley's keep getting away with this? He can't keep getting away with it! Also, did you see that episode of Black Mirror with Jesse in it? Holy crap, the ending was disturbing. Rackley's isn't going to keep getting away with it. I mean, obviously he had some citizens chanting for him last week, but you have Rita finally ready to arrest him, and where we leave him off at the end isn't so great. But you do have some other stuff going on, setting the stage for some things. Mainly with the Black Ranger. Finally, probably the best I've liked the Black Ranger. It seems like he's finally on Team Gira and Team everyone else to a degree. You know, despite my annoyance with him, I certainly don't hope this means the end of his pseudo-scheming and stuff, because that does keep things interesting. And as much as I want to see everyone unite to a degree, I do like the idea of everyone having their own motivations, and I want to see that going forward. With that being said, I think this was finally an episode that had me like him more. It was funny, it sent me on a bit of a roller coaster, as you initially have a nice moment where Gira, realizing he's going into a fight with Rackley's, reveals that he overheard, you know, his sister sort of crying when she was being held captive and stuff like that, and giving him some insight, and just doing it as a selfless deed was a nice Rackley's moment, but also a nice moment for him to, you know, sort of more recognize Gira yet again. And I'm like, okay, this is a nice moment between them. And then immediately you have this weird sequence where his sister's pretending like, oh, I'm the fiance, so I'm gonna give you punishment for sneaking around by making you pretend to be a beetle. And it was all over the top and goofy, and I'm like, what are we doing, man? I initially was like, are we setting up for more Black Ranger stuff where I actually like him? And then it's immediately annoying. But then that pays off later when he reveals his huge betrayal and like this was all a scheme all along. Which we knew, but we didn't know exactly what his motivations were, but at least for now, it's to support Gira. And it reveals like all of his plans from the beginning with his sister so that they could get what effectively controls Black King-Ohger and the power-up, which is the sword. So it was really well done, and it showed that whole silly sequence was for a reason so that he could find the button to find the key, which I was so happy about that. But again, it sent me on a roller coaster. I'm like, are we setting me up to finally like the Black Ranger? And then it's being annoying as hell, and I was like, shoo goddamn! And then I actually really liked him at the end. He's still not my favorite, but I'm definitely a little bit more endeared to him. I just honestly really wanted to like him because outside of Gira's whole wahaha king routine, for the most part I like everybody, and I hated that there was one character that I was hating so much. But really strong episode for him, so I was really happy about that. Superficial note, there were some really beautiful shots in this episode, like when you had Papillion Ohger and Kamakiri Ohger fighting on the ground, and then you see the mecha fighting above. That was really cool. I always like when they do ground and mech fights at the same time. They did that in Go Busters sometimes, and it was just really cool, and it made for a really cool visual. A cool visual. Also, there was a really cool shot of Gira in front of the big combo at the very end. And by that I mean it was like a burger, fries, and a shake. No, but you know what I mean. It was really cool. Some good cinematography in the show when it wants to be. Anyway, so ultimately, of course, Gira does end up with the power-up because Black Ranger gets it for him. And he's able to transform into the golden armor form, the proper main power-up for him, which gets a bit of a morph sequence and stuff like that, which is cool. Not the biggest fan of the over sing-songy sounds, for it. I mean, the sword does have it to a degree, but I like the way it ends on a cooler note. But overall, I do like the power-up and the way it works and all that. And he does ultimately get it, and we get a final confrontation for this episode between him and Rackley's, with Rackley's and King-Ohger Zero, and him in the big combo with God Tarantula. Now, this is where I have some mixed thoughts. You know, we kind of previewed that last week with, you know, Jeremy trying to sort of force that, and we got like a prototype version without the helmet with the strings, which was really cool. And we did get it finally this week, and it was nice, but I was kind of hoping, I guess it's kind of cliche. Maybe it's nice they're doing things different. But I did like how when they brought together King-Ohger, the god King-Ohger, it represented the kings really working together for the first time. And though it is cliche, I was hoping that this would represent at least one of the first times Jeremy was working with them. And it seemed weird the big combo that's the Sixth Ranger combining with them really only had to do with Rackley's and his brother, and then the Black Ranger like literally riding in the back seat. Again, it's a nitpick. It's not like it's ruining the whole episode for me overall, but narratively it definitely had that feel of like Red Ranger's most important. The idea that you have one of the biggest combos we've seen yet, more or less piloted by one person. I know Black Ranger was there, but you know what I mean. That bothered me a little bit, and I felt it jumbled a little bit of the narrative of the last stretch of episodes, with Jeremy coming in, and then like fighting against them when everyone was behaving selfishly, and then working with them again, and then now feeling guilty over like causing some stuff. And then now, I don't know, it was just jumbled. It didn't necessarily have to do with this episode, but I feel that aspect is a little bit jumbled in regards to Jeremy's place in all this. And at the very least, I think they could have used the fact that he supposedly felt guilty to have him be like, hey, I'm coming in to help. So, I don't know. Again, it's not an overall mark on this episode, but it did make the narrative, more so in regards to Jeremy's dynamic in these last handful of episodes, feel jumbled up with this debut, which is kind of unfortunate. Because it's funny that I talked about recently how I think they handled debuting the Sixth Ranger and the Rogue Ranger together rather well. But this kind of feels like the forced debut of this power-up kind of stumbled over some stuff they might have been trying to do with Jeremy. Again, it's not a huge deal, but it did bother me just a little bit in that regard. But it was a cool final fight for that. And there was more of a glimpse into their past when we saw the crown, which is, I guess, the crown passed down from Kuwagata. It has some mysterious origins. They allude to some stuff and answer some stuff, but I think there might be more to it ultimately later. But most importantly, we get another flashback of young Rackley's and young Gira, which does show not only that Rackley's was a more loving brother, but that he obviously had some more you know, good motivations for becoming king. Talking about, you know, the idea that a king is supposed to protect his people and those people are supposed to protect those people. And in that way, everyone's kind of the king of their own kingdom, protecting their own people. So just showing he wasn't always a douche. So setting up probably for a redemption. I mentioned last week that outside of the flashbacks, there wasn't a whole lot that would signify his redemption. Somebody did bring up a good point, though, where he didn't, you know, hit any vital organs or anything when he fought against Gira. So, I mean, I know it's a foregone conclusion there's a redemption. I have a dream one day of a Rogue Ranger or an Evil Ranger that just stays evil for the whole show. But in this case, I'm at least down for this because I want Rackley's to be a more complex character. And I do appreciate, for the actor and the writing, how outside of the detail of him not hitting anything vital when he fought Gira, his performance has been very, like, dastardly and evil. Like, there's been no hints of it, which I think is good and a nice contrast to the flashbacks, which makes me immensely curious what happens to him. Regardless, he's still probably one of my favorite characters. He's like a good example of like a character you love to hate. Like, he annoys me so much and I hate him, but also is a great character and adds such a great dynamic to the series. So I'm really curious to see more about that as we go forward. And we end on a huge note of basically the deal with the Bugnaught going sour, where they more or less have control, and most people don't, don't on Rackley's side. Quote that. Dawson Rider says, most people don't on Rackley's side. No, but I like how I could have avoided even saying it, but then I told you what I was going to say, because I thought it was funny. Anyway, most people aren't on Rackley's side, aka most people don't on Rackley's side. So, yeah, that puts him in an interesting position. Obviously, we could position it now for redemption, where he gets help from people, but we have quite a bit of real estate left in the show. So my hope is that it's more about Rackley's pulling himself by his bootstraps, still as Rackley's, as a douche who's fighting for himself and his goals, and then we do the redemption later. But I want to see Rackley's pull himself up as a villain first. I think that'd be interesting. But man, this is a good show. Again, I do have some concerns about stuff like that with just them doing this final combo in the situation where it was more about these singular characters rather than all pulling them all together, which is a little bit unfortunate and stuff like that. But it's nothing that holds the episode overall back for me in a huge way or anything like that. If I had any other little nitpicks, and this is really more of a nitpick, because I do wish this was maybe one more episode. It was like sort of a two-parter lead-in, but it was kind of rushed a little bit to have Rackley's get the power-up at the open and then Gira at the end. It was well done. I don't think the episode felt rushed. The episode, I don't know why I said it like that. My sensors were off. But I think that it would have been nice to have us sit with Rackley's having the power-up for an episode and the threat of that, and then have him get the power-up next episode. Just because for the most part, outside of shoehorning in those little roly-polies, the pacing on the show is pretty good in regards to that. Again, it's a small nitpick. I think it would have just enhanced the story to be able to sit with that dynamic for a while. But they made Rackley's suit for this, so there's no way we're not going to see it again. But overall, a strong episode. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. What did you guys think of this dual power-up episode? Honestly, it was like a triple debut. We got 2 power-up forms and a Megazord formation. But what did you guys think of it? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.